The grand assembly chamber stretched out like a small world unto itself. Its ceiling rose so high that artificial clouds drifted near the top, and the walls curved in a perfect circle that seemed to have no beginning and no end. 47 species gathered here today, just as they had gathered every 100 years for the past 3 centuries. This was the Centennial Summit, where the Galactic Concordat renewed its vows of peace and cooperation. Ambassador Chiron of Thraxia stood near the entrance, his 4 eyes wide with wonder. This was his first summit, his first time seeing so many different forms of life in one place. There were the towering Vexari with their crystalline skin that sang when they moved, the small quick Pithrani who never seemed to stop moving, the ancient Draconians whose scales had turned silver with age. All of them wore the formal robes of their people. All of them carried themselves with dignity and purpose. Chiron was young for a diplomat, barely 40 cycles old. His mentor had died suddenly and he had been thrust into this role with only basic training. He felt like a child among giants, but he was determined to learn, to understand, to serve his people well. As he walked through the chamber, studying the seating arrangements, something caught his attention. In the front row, where the most ancient and powerful species sat, there was an empty seat. It was not simply empty like a seat waiting to be filled. It was pristine, untouched, as if no one had ever sat there. The seat was made of a beautiful blue-green marble that seemed to swirl with patterns like water and land mixed together. Strange symbols were carved into the armrests, symbols Chiron did not recognize. He moved closer, curious. The seats on either side were occupied. To the left sat a Vexari elder whose name Chiron did not know. To the right was an empty space where a Cathari representative would soon sit. But this middle seat, this beautiful throne of blue-green stone, remained empty. "Excuse me," Chiron said to the Vexari elder. His translator device converted his words into the musical tones of the Vexari language. "May I ask why this seat is empty?" The Vexari elder turned to look at him. Her crystalline face showed no expression, but her body's song changed to a minor key. It was a sound of discomfort. "You are new to the summit," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, honored elder. I am Ambassador Chiron of Thraxia. This is my first Centennial Summit." The elder's song grew quieter. "Then you would not know. That seat has been empty for 300 years. It will remain empty for 300 more and 300 after that." "But why?" Chiron asked. "Surely such a prominent seat should be filled. What species does it belong to?" The Vexari elder turned away. "Ask someone else, young one. I do not speak of such things." Chiron felt confused and slightly insulted, but he did not press the matter. Instead, he asked others. A Pithrani diplomat gave him a nervous laugh and changed the subject. A Draconian warrior simply stared at him until he walked away. An elderly Cathari administrator patted him on the shoulder with one of her 6 arms and said, "Some questions are better left unasked." But Chiron was young and curious, and the mystery of the empty seat consumed him. During the opening ceremonies, he found himself staring at it instead of listening to the speeches. During the diplomatic receptions, he asked more subtle questions, trying to learn what everyone seemed to know but would not say. Finally, on the 3rd day of the summit, an old Vexari chancellor named Sorthian approached him. Sorthian was ancient even by Vexari standards. His crystalline body had begun to cloud with age, and his song was slow and deep like the rumble of distant thunder. "You want to know about the empty seat?" Sorthian said. It was not a question. "Yes, honored Chancellor. Everyone refuses to speak of it. What secret could be so terrible?" Sorthian's song became sad. "It is not terrible, young ambassador. It is shameful. Shameful for us, not for them." He gestured to a quiet corner of the reception hall. "Come, I will tell you what you wish to know." They sat in a private alcove where the noise of the party could not reach them. Sorthian was quiet for a long moment, his crystal body humming softly as he gathered his thoughts. "That seat belongs to Earth," he finally said. "Earth?" Chiron had never heard of this species. "A species called humans. They live on the 3rd planet of a yellow star they call Sul. far out in the unfashionable arm of the galaxy. 300 years ago, we discovered them. They had just developed faster-than-light travel. Their ships were crude but functional. Their technology was generations behind ours, but they had reached the stars, and so we contacted them. That is standard procedure, Chiron said. We always welcome new species to the Concordat. Yes, Sorthian agreed. We sent our finest. Diplomats, our most decorated admirals, our most learned scholars. We brought gifts and offers of friendship. We showed them the wonders of our civilization. We offered them membership in the Concordat. We offered them protection, trade, knowledge, a place among the great species of the galaxy. That sounds generous. What went wrong? Sorthian's song became harsh, like metal scraping on metal. They refused. Chiron blinked all four eyes in surprise. Refused? But why would any species refuse such an offer? That is what we asked them. Our diplomats were confused. Never before had a species rejected the Concordat. We thought perhaps we had not explained properly. We sent more envoys. We made more generous offers. We promised them technology, wealth, security. Still they refused. What did they say? They said many things, but I remember one meeting in particular. It was transmitted back to us, and I watched it myself. A human admiral stood before our diplomats. She was old by their standards, with gray hair and scars on her face. She had fought in their wars, back when they fought among themselves. And she said these words, "We don't join, we don't submit, we don't bow. We thank you for your offer, but humanity charts its own course." Chiron felt a chill run through his body. That is, very prideful. Yes, we thought so too. The council was offended. How dare this young species, barely out of their own star system, reject the wisdom and protection of the Concordat? Some argued we should leave them alone, let them learn their lesson when the dangers of the galaxy found them. But others argued that no species could be allowed to stand apart. It set a bad example. It suggested that the Concordat could be refused. What did the council decide? Sorthian's song became almost silent. They decided to enforce compliance. Not through war, they said. Just a simple blockade. Cut off Earth's access to the wider galaxy. Prevent their ships from traveling beyond their own system. Make them isolated and alone. Eventually, they would see reason. Eventually, they would beg to join. And did they? No. Sorthian's song swelled with something Chiron had never heard before in the normally peaceful Vexari. It sounded like fear. They did not beg. They did not negotiate. They fought. But you said their technology was generations behind yours. How could they fight? That is what we thought. We stationed a fleet at the edge of their system. 30 ships, more than enough to maintain a blockade against their primitive vessels. The humans sent one ship to meet us. Just one. It was a small diplomatic cruiser, unarmed. Our admiral thought they were coming to negotiate. He was wrong. Sorthian paused, and Chiron leaned forward, captivated despite himself. The human ship approached the flagship of our fleet. When it was close enough, it sent a single message. "You are blocking our way. Move or be moved." Our admiral laughed. He thought it was bravado, the bluster of a weak species trying to appear strong. He refused to move. The human ship turned around and left. That was wise of them. We thought so. But 3 hours later, the human ship returned. Only this time it was not alone. It came with 50 ships. Old cargo vessels, colony ships, mining craft. Nothing military, nothing dangerous. Our admiral still did not take them seriously. And then the humans did something we did not expect. They accelerated to ramming speed. Chiron felt his breathing quicken. They rammed your ships? Yes. The cargo vessels were filled with explosives. The colony ships had evacuated all civilians first, then turned themselves into kinetic weapons. They moved at speeds that should have torn their ships apart. Some did tear apart before they reached us, but enough survived. They destroyed 3 of our ships and damaged 7 more. Then they retreated. That is insane, Chiron whispered. That is what we said. Our admiral sent a message to Earth demanding an explanation, threatening retaliation. The humans sent back a video. It showed humans throughout their history. Soldiers throwing themselves on grenades to save their friends. Pilots crashing their burning planes into enemy ships. Crews staying aboard sinking vessels to give others time to escape. The message with the video said, "We have a word for what we just did. We call it Tuesday." Kyron did not understand. Tuesday? It is one of their days of the week. They were saying that such sacrifice was ordinary to them. Normal. Expected. Sorthian's song became mournful. The council authorized military action. They sent more ships better armed. Over the next 2 years, there were dozens of skirmishes, small battles at the edge of the Sol system, and in every battle the humans fought with a fury we had never seen. Surely your superior technology won. Technology means nothing when your enemy does not fear death. We won battles, yes. We destroyed their ships, yes. But they made us pay for every victory. They turned asteroids into weapons. They hid bombs inside disabled ships waiting for us to board them. They sent false surrender signals, then detonated nuclear weapons when our ships came close. They mined the space around their colonies with so many explosives that our ships could not approach safely. Sorthian paused to let his words sink in, and then came the Battle of Luna's shadow. What happened? Luna is Earth's moon. Humans had built a military base inside it. Our fleet decided to capture it, to use it as leverage against Earth. We sent ground troops, the best soldiers from a dozen species. The battle was fierce. The humans fought for every corridor, every room. They refused to surrender even when we cornered them. And when they realized they would lose, they activated the base's self-destruct system. Kyron felt cold. They destroyed their own base? They destroyed the entire facility. 40,000 of our soldiers died in the explosion. 3 of our transport ships were caught in the blast. And the humans sent a message afterward. It said, "You cannot take what we will not give. You cannot hold what we are willing to destroy. Leave now or learn this lesson again and again until you understand." What did the council do? Sorthian's song was barely audible now. They counted the cost. In 2 years of conflict, we had lost 23% of our military fleet. We had not captured a single human world. We had not forced a single human to surrender, and the intelligence report said the humans were just beginning to mobilize their full war machine. They had converted their civilian economy to military production. They were building ships faster than we could destroy them, and every human seemed willing to die rather than submit. So the council gave up? The council made peace. We withdrew our ships. We lifted the blockade. We offered a treaty of non-aggression, which the humans accepted. And we left that seat empty in the Grand Assembly as a reminder. A reminder of what? Sorthian looked at Kyron with his clouded crystalline eyes. A reminder that some species cannot be conquered. They can only be destroyed, and the cost of destroying them is too high. Earth's seat remains empty because humans will never join the Concordat. They will never submit to any authority but their own. They will never bow, never kneel, never accept our protection or our rule. Kyron stared at the old chancellor. But that is not how civilization works. Every species must cooperate, must compromise, must sometimes accept the authority of others for the greater good. Yes, Sorthian agreed. Every species in this galaxy has done so. Every species has submitted to someone at some point in their history. We Vexari were conquered by the Draconians 2,000 years ago. We accepted their rule for 3 centuries, before earning our freedom through loyal service. The Cathari joined the Concordat to avoid extinction by the Vexari. The Pithrani submitted to the Council to gain protection from raiders. Every species here has bent the knee at some point. Every species except humanity. That cannot be true, surely in their history. I studied their history after the war, Sorthian interrupted. They have a saying they put on monuments all across their worlds. It says, "Death before dishonor, extinction before chains." And they mean it. In their history, there are hundreds of examples of humans choosing death over submission. Soldiers who fought to the last bullet, then the last blade, then their bare hands. Civilians who burned their cities rather than surrender them. Rebels who kept fighting even when defeat was certain. It is woven into their culture, into their very nature. Kyron looked at the empty seat with new eyes. It was not just furniture. It was a warning. A memorial. A promise. "Does anyone ever sit there?" he asked quietly. "No, we keep it clean and maintained. Every summit we send an invitation to Earth. Every summit they decline. They do not want to join us. They do not need us. And after what we did to them, they do not trust us. What if we need them? Sorthian's song became sharp with surprise. What? What if the Concordat needed Earth's help? Would they come? The old chancellor thought for a long moment. I do not know, perhaps not. Humans are strange. They seem to love freedom more than life itself, but they also have a strange sense of honor. They help those who are weak, even if it costs them, but they never forgive those who try to control them. Chiron nodded slowly. He looked at the empty seat and felt he was beginning to understand. The seat was not empty because humans were too proud to sit in it. The seat was empty because humans did not want to sit in it. They did not want to be part of a council, a hierarchy, a system where someone else made the rules. Thank you for telling me this, honored chancellor. You are welcome, young ambassador. But let me give you one more piece of advice. Sorthian's song became serious. Do not speak too loudly about Earth or humans. Many species here are still ashamed of what happened. Many still fear them. And some still resent them for refusing to join us. The empty seat is a wound that has never fully healed. Chiron promised to be discreet, but as the summit continued over the following days, he could not stop thinking about Earth and the species called humans. He began researching them in the Concordat archives. Most of the files were classified, but some were available to ambassadors. He read reports from the war, casualty figures, tactical analyses. He watched videos of human ships ramming Concordat vessels. He read transcripts of intercepted human communications. And one phrase kept appearing in those communications, over and over. Human soldiers said it to each other before battle. Human pilots said it before flying into danger. Human commanders said it when ordering what seemed like suicide missions. The phrase was simple: someone has to. Chiron did not understand it at first. Someone has to what? But as he read more, he began to see. Someone has to stand and fight. Someone has to sacrifice. Someone has to refuse to submit. Someone has to show that freedom is worth dying for. It was not bravado. It was not stupidity. It was a deep belief that some things mattered more than survival. And humans believed freedom was one of those things. The summit ended, and the delegates returned to their homeworlds. Chiron went back to Thraxia with a mind full of questions and a new understanding of the galaxy. The Concordat was not perfect. It was not even always right. It had tried to force a species into submission, and that species had taught them a hard lesson. Earth's seat remained empty, and somewhere out in the unfashionable arm of the galaxy, on the third planet of a yellow star, humans lived their lives free and unchained, answering to no one but themselves. Chiron wondered if he would ever meet a human. He wondered what they would be like. He wondered if they were as fierce as the stories said, or if the stories had grown bigger than the truth. He would get his answer sooner than he expected. But that is a story for another time. Chiron could not let the mystery rest. The empty seat haunted him, and the stories Sorthian had told him felt incomplete. There were details missing, pieces of the puzzle he needed to find. So when he returned to Thraxia after the summit, he did something that most young diplomats would never dare. He began requesting classified files about the human conflict. His first dozen requests were denied. His 20th request was denied with a warning to stop asking. His 35th request earned him a visit from his superior, Ambassador Prime Valthix, who looked at him with disappointment in all four eyes. "Why are you obsessed with this species?" Valthix asked. "They are not part of the Concordat. They are not our concern." "Knowledge is always our concern," Chiron replied. "How can we be good diplomats if we do not understand the galaxy we live in?" Valthix could not argue with that. He was old and tired, ready to retire, and he did not have the energy to fight with his young subordinate. "Fine, I will grant you access to the witness testimonies. But Chiron, be careful. Some knowledge changes you, and not always for the better." The files arrived the next day. Hundreds of hours of recorded interviews with soldiers, pilots, and commanders who had fought against humanity. Chiron locked himself in his private study and began to watch them. What he saw would stay with him forever. The first testimony was from a Cathari commander named Velrix. She sat before the camera with 5 of her 6 arms folded, the 6th tapping nervously on the table. Her compound eyes looked haunted. "We thought it would be easy," she said. "Our ships were faster, our weapons more powerful, our sensors more advanced. We encountered a human patrol ship near the asteroid belt. Just one ship, small and outdated. Our captain hailed them and ordered them to stand down and prepare to be boarded. The humans refused. Velrix paused, her mandibles clicking in distress. We disabled their engines with a precision shot. We disabled their weapons. We even damaged their life support systems. The ship was drifting, powerless. We approached to take the crew prisoner. That is when they opened fire with small arms. Small arms? The interviewer asked. Handheld weapons. Personal firearms. They were shooting at our ship with guns that could barely scratch our hull. It was pointless, stupid. We told them to stop, that they were only wasting ammunition. They sent back a message. Come and take us. So we boarded their ship. Velrix's voice became quieter. There were only 20 humans on that ship. 20 against our boarding party of 80. We had powered armor and energy weapons. They had rifles and desperation. The battle lasted 3 hours. 3 hours for 20 humans in a dead ship with no power and failing life support. They fought us in the dark. They fought us in corridors filled with smoke. They fought us until every single one of them was dead. And your casualties? 37 wounded. 12 dead. We lost more soldiers taking that one ship than we lost in the entire siege of the Cathari homeworld a century ago. Velrix looked directly at the camera. That was when I understood. Humans do not surrender. It is not in their nature. They will fight until they win or until they die. There is no middle ground with them. Chiron paused the video, feeling sick. He got up and walked around his study, trying to process what he had heard. 20 humans against 80 trained soldiers in powered armor. It should have been a massacre. It was a massacre, but not the kind anyone expected. He sat down and played the next testimony. This one was from a Draconian pilot named Scarthul. Draconians were known for their warrior culture, their love of honor and combat, but Scarthul looked shaken as he spoke. I was part of the blockade fleet, he said. We had orders to prevent any human ships from leaving the Sol system. One day, a convoy of human colony ships approached our position. 20 ships all moving together. These were not warships. They were civilian vessels designed to carry families to new worlds. Our admiral hailed them and ordered them to turn back. The humans refused. Scarthul's clawed hands gripped the edge of the table. The convoy kept coming. We fired warning shots across their path. They did not slow down. Our admiral was frustrated but not worried. He ordered us to target their engines, disable them without destroying them. We did. We hit every ship in the convoy, crippling their propulsion systems. They should have stopped. They did not stop. What did they do? They kept coming. With no engines, they used maneuvering thrusters. When those failed, they used escape pods as makeshift rockets, pushing the ships forward. It took them 2 days to reach our position. 2 days of watching these massive ships crawl toward us with no weapons, no defenses, just stubborn determination. What happened when they reached you? Scarthul closed his eyes. We saw the evacuation pods launching, thousands of them scattering in all directions. We realized too late what was happening. The humans had evacuated everyone from the colony ships. And then the ships exploded. Exploded? They had packed them with explosives. Antimatter charges, nuclear weapons, chemical explosives. Everything they had. 20 colony ships became 20 enormous bombs. 3 of our ships were destroyed immediately. 5 more were damaged so badly they had to retreat, and the human survivors in the escape pods scattered so widely that we could not capture them all. Most of them made it to safe harbors beyond our blockade. Scarthul opened his eyes and looked at the camera. I am Draconian. My people have fought in 100 wars. We value courage and honor in battle, but what the humans did that day was not courage. It was something beyond courage. It was a willingness to sacrifice everything, even their homes and possessions, to achieve their goal. I still have nightmares about those 20 ships crawling toward us. I knew they were going to do something terrible, but I could not stop them. Chiron turned off the video and sat in silence. He felt cold despite the warm temperature of his study. These were not stories of brave heroes fighting impossible odds. These were stories of an entire species that refused to accept defeat, no matter the cost. He played another testimony, and another, and another. Each one told a similar story. Humans who fought in damaged ships with no life support, breathing through masks as they fired their weapons. Humans who set traps in their own space stations, luring Concordate soldiers into ambushes. Humans who pretended to surrender, then activated bombs when their captors came to take them prisoner. One video showed the aftermath of a battle. A Concordat captain walked through a destroyed human outpost, his camera recording everything. The walls were scorched black. The floors were covered in debris, and on every wall written in human languages were messages. We will never submit. Death before chains. You will pay for every inch. Earth remembers. The captain's voice was shaken as he narrated. They knew they were going to die. They knew they could not win. But they left these messages anyway. They wanted us to know that killing them did not mean defeating them. Chiron watched testimony after testimony. Days turned into weeks as he absorbed the horror and the awe of what humanity had done, and slowly a picture began to form in his mind. This was not just about one species refusing to join the Concordat. This was about a fundamental difference in worldview. Every species in the Concordat understood that survival was the highest goal. Yes, there were principles and values, but when faced with extinction, every species would compromise. Every species would bend rather than break. It was logical. It was rational. It was the way civilization worked. But humans did not think this way. To them, some things were worth dying for. Freedom was worth dying for. Independence was worth dying for. The right to choose their own path was worth dying for. They would rather die as free beings than live as subjects. Chiron found a video file labeled Battle of Luna's Shadow, Full Report. He hesitated before opening it. Sorthian had told him about this battle, but the old Chancellor's description had been brief. This file was 8 hours long. He watched it. He watched all 8 hours, and when it was over, he sat in his dark study with tears running down his face from all 4 eyes. The Battle of Luna's Shadow had been brutal. 40,000 Concordat soldiers had been deployed to capture the human base inside Earth's moon. The base was critical to Earth's defense network, and the Concordat wanted to use it as leverage. The battle had lasted 6 days. The humans fought for every corridor, every room, every inch of ground. They used tactics that no civilized species would consider. They flooded sections of the base with radiation to slow the Concordat advance. They collapsed tunnels on their own people to block enemy movement. They fought hand-to-hand with knives and tools when their ammunition ran out. On the 6th day, the Concordat forces finally cornered the last group of human defenders in the central command room. There were only 200 humans left out of the original 5,000 defenders. They were out of ammunition, out of supplies, out of options. The Concordat commander gave them one final chance to surrender. The human commander, a woman named Colonel Sarah Chen, appeared on the video screen. She was covered in blood and dust. Her left arm was in a makeshift sling, but her eyes were clear and steady. "We have a message for your council," she said. "You think you can take what is ours. You think you can force us to join you. You are wrong. This base is ours. Luna is ours. Earth is ours, and you cannot have any of it." "Colonel, be reasonable," the Concordat commander said. "You have fought well. You have shown great courage, but you have lost. Surrender now, and you will be treated with honor." "We have not lost," Colonel Chen replied. "We have chosen." Those were her last words. 10 seconds later, the base's fusion reactor detonated. The explosion vaporized the entire facility and killed everyone inside, human and Concordat alike. 3 transport ships in orbit were caught in the blast. In total, 43,000 beings died in an instant. But the horror did not end there. After the explosion, Earth sent a message to the Concordat fleet. It was broadcast on all channels, impossible to ignore. The message was a video compilation of similar sacrifices throughout human history. Soldiers destroying bridges while still standing on them. Pilots crashing their damaged planes into enemy targets. Captains staying aboard sinking ships to ensure others could escape. The message ended with text in multiple languages. "You cannot take what we will not give. You cannot hold what we are willing to destroy. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Leave now, or learn this lesson again and again until you understand." Chiron watched the Concordat fleet's response to this message. He watched as admirals and generals held emergency meetings. He watched as they calculated the cost of continuing the conflict. The numbers were stark. In 2 years, the Concordat had lost 23% of its military fleet. They had killed hundreds of thousands of humans, but they had not captured a single world. They had not forced a single human to join the Concordat. And intelligence suggested that humanity was just beginning to mobilize its full industrial capacity for war. One general put it bluntly, "We can defeat them, but the cost will be millions of our soldiers and thousands of our ships. And for what? To force them into the Concordat? They will never truly join us. They will resist forever. They will sabotage and rebel and make our lives miserable. We cannot conquer a people who prefer death to submission. The council voted to end the conflict. A peace treaty was signed. The blockade was lifted, and Earth's seat in the Grand Assembly was left empty as a reminder of what had happened. Chiron finished watching the files. He sat in his study for a long time, thinking about what he had learned. He understood now why people did not want to talk about Earth. It was not just shame, it was fear. Fear of a species that could not be controlled, could not be predicted, could not be defeated in any meaningful way. But Chiron felt something else alongside his fear. He felt respect. He felt awe. And he felt a strange sense of hope. Because if humanity could stand against the entire Concordat and win, what else might they be capable of? He wrote a report summarizing his research. He sent it to the diplomatic archive, where it would be available to any ambassador who wanted to understand humanity. He ended the report with a simple observation. Every species in the galaxy has submitted to someone at some point in their history. Every species has bent the knee, accepted foreign rule, compromised their freedom for survival. Every species except humanity. They have never known submission because they would rather die than submit. This makes them dangerous. This makes them unpredictable. But this also makes them unique. And perhaps in a galaxy where everyone has learned to bow, we need someone who remembers how to stand. Chiron sent the report and closed his files. He thought he was done with humanity. He thought he would never need to think about them again. He was wrong, because 3 months later a distress signal arrived from the outer rim. The signal used old emergency codes, codes that had not been used in 500 years. The message was simple and terrifying. The swarm has returned. The Void Swarm was a legend, a horror story that elder species told to frighten young ones. An extragalactic hive mind that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but empty rocks and silence. They had appeared 500 years ago and ravaged a dozen systems before mysteriously disappearing back into the void between galaxies. Now they had returned, and this time they were not leaving. Chiron stood in the emergency council session and listened to the reports. 12 species had already been wiped out. Their homeworlds were lifeless husks. The swarm did not negotiate. It did not take prisoners. It simply consumed everything and moved on. The council was in chaos. Some species proposed immediate surrender. Others wanted to flee to the far side of the galaxy. No one had any idea how to fight something that could not be reasoned with and could not be stopped. That was when Chiron stood up. His legs felt weak, but his voice was strong. We must ask Earth for help. The chamber fell silent. Everyone turned to stare at him. And then the shouting began. Ask those savages for help. They humiliated us. They would probably join the swarm just to spite us. But Chiron stood his ground. He looked at the council and spoke the truth that everyone was avoiding. We need someone who knows how to fight without hope of victory. We need someone who refuses to surrender even when defeat is certain. We need someone who has never known submission. We need humanity. The vote was close. Many species refused to support asking Earth for help, but enough were desperate enough to try. A delegation was assembled, and Chiron, because he had suggested it, was chosen to lead it. They traveled to the Sol system. They requested permission to dock at Titan Station, humanity's military headquarters, and they waited to see if humanity would even talk to them, let alone help them. The species that had tried to blockade Earth, tried to force them into submission, was now coming to beg for their aid. Chiron did not know what would happen, but he knew one thing. Everything was about to change. Titan Station hung in orbit around Saturn's largest moon like a fortress made of steel and defiance. It was massive, larger than any station the Concordat had ever built. Chiron watched it grow bigger through the viewport of their diplomatic ship and felt his heart beating faster with anxiety. The station bristled with weapons, and dozens of human warships patrolled around it in perfect formation. They have been tracking us since we entered the system, said Commander Zixral, a draconian warrior who served as the delegation's military advisor. Very thorough, very professional. They have not fired on us, noted Ambassador Prell of the Vexari. Her crystalline body hummed with nervous tension. That is encouraging. Chiron hoped she was right. The delegation consisted of representatives from 7 species, all carefully chosen. No one from the species that had been most aggressive during the blockade. No one who had spoken harshly about humanity in the past. Just diplomats who were known for being reasonable and fair. Still, Chiron expected a cold reception at best. At worst, the humans might simply refuse to see them. They had every right to be angry. The docking procedures were smooth and efficient. Human technicians guided their ship into a berth without any problems. When the delegation emerged from their ship, they found a small welcoming party waiting. 20 human Marines in formal dress uniforms stood at attention. At the front was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She wore an admiral's insignia on her uniform. "I am Admiral Elizabeth Chen," she said. Her voice was calm but not warm. "Welcome to Titan Station. Please follow me." Chiron felt something cold settle in his stomach. Chen. He knew that name. Colonel Sarah Chen had been the commander who destroyed the Luna base. This must be a relative, perhaps her mother or aunt. The humans had sent someone with every reason to hate the Concordat. They were led through the station's corridors. Everything was clean and functional. Human crew members stopped and saluted as Admiral Chen passed, but they also stared at the alien visitors with expressions that ranged from curiosity to hostility. Chiron could not blame them. Finally, they arrived at a large conference room. The table was set up with 7 chairs on one side for the delegation, and 1 chair on the other side for Admiral Chen. The symbolism was clear. 7 species against 1 human. But somehow Chiron suspected the human was not intimidated. They all sat down. Admiral Chen folded her hands on the table and looked at each of them in turn. Her gaze was like a laser, cutting through pretense and politeness. When she finally spoke, her words were blunt. "You want our help?" It was not a question, but Chiron answered anyway. "Yes, Admiral. The Void Swarm has returned. In 3 months, 12 species have been completely wiped out. Their homeworlds are dead. We do not know how to stop them. And you think we do?" "No," Chiron said honestly. "But we know that you do not give up. We know that you fight even when victory seems impossible. We need that right now. The Concordat is paralyzed by fear. Half of our species want to surrender. The other half want to run. No one knows how to stand and fight." Admiral Chen's expression did not change. 300 years ago, you blockaded our system. You tried to force us to join your Concordat. You attacked our ships and our stations. 40,000 of your soldiers died at Luna because we refused to surrender. Now you come here asking for help?" The words hung in the air like a blade. Ambassador Prell started to speak, probably to offer some diplomatic explanation, but Chiron held up a hand to stop her. He looked directly at Admiral Chen and spoke from his heart. "We were wrong. 300 years ago we were arrogant and foolish. We thought that because we were older and more advanced we had the right to tell you what to do. We thought strength meant control. You taught us that real strength is choosing when to fight and what to fight for. You taught us that freedom cannot be forced. We learned that lesson at a terrible cost, but we learned it." Admiral Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Pretty words, Ambassador. But words are easy. What makes you think we should risk our lives for species that tried to conquer us?" "Because that is what you do," Chiron said simply. "I have studied your history. I have read about your wars. You fought each other for centuries before you reached the stars. But when the fighting was over, you helped each other rebuild. Your strongest nations helped your weakest. Your richest helped your poorest. You have a saying, 'We are our brother's keeper.' You help those who need help even if they have wronged you in the past." "That applies to other humans," Admiral Chen said coldly. "You are not human." "No, we are not. But the swarm does not care about species or politics or old grudges. It just consumes everything. If it destroys the Concordat, it will not stop there. It will keep moving through the galaxy until it finds Earth. And then you will face it alone, without allies, without warning. Help us now and you help yourselves." Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair. For a long moment she said nothing. The silence stretched until it became painful. Finally she spoke. "I need to be honest with you, Ambassador. I do not like the Concordat. I do not like what you tried to do to my people. My daughter died at Luna. She was Colonel Sarah Chen. She was the commander who detonated the base rather than surrender." Chiron felt his blood freeze. This was not just a relative. This was the mother of the woman who became a legend. The woman whose sacrifice had helped end the war. "I am sorry for your loss," Chiron said quietly. "Your daughter was very brave." "My daughter was 28 years old," Admiral Chen said, and for the first time emotion cracked through her controlled exterior. "She should have lived to be 100. She should have had children and grandchildren. But she died because your people tried to take what was not yours. So no, Ambassador, I do not want to help you. I want to let you face the consequences of living in a dangerous galaxy without being strong enough to protect yourselves." The delegation sat in shocked silence. This meeting was over. They had failed. But then Admiral Chen continued. "However, I am not the only one who makes decisions for humanity. This must go to the Assembly. They will debate and vote. I will give them my recommendation, but the choice is theirs. What will you recommend?" Ambassador Prell asked. "I do not know yet," Admiral Chen admitted. "Part of me wants to say no and let you suffer as we suffered. But another part of me knows that my daughter did not sacrifice herself so humanity could become the same kind of petty tyrants who tried to control us. She died so we could remain free, and free people get to choose their own path even if that path is difficult." She stood up and the delegation quickly followed suit. "You will stay here as our guests while the Assembly debates. It should take about 72 hours. During that time, you are free to move around the station, speak with our people, see how we live. Maybe it will help you understand us better." With that, Admiral Chen left the room. The delegation stood in stunned silence. "That could have gone better," Commander Zixral muttered. Over the next 3 days, the delegation did as Admiral Chen suggested. They walked through Titan Station and observed humanity. What they saw surprised them. The station was not just a military base. It was a city in space. There were families here, children playing in parks under artificial sky. There were markets and restaurants and entertainment centers. There were schools and hospitals and places of worship. The humans had not just built a fortress. They had built a home. Chiron watched human children play a game that involved chasing each other and laughing. He saw human couples walking hand in hand. He saw old humans teaching young ones how to repair equipment. He saw a species that valued life and joy and community. But he also saw the other side. He watched Marines training in combat simulations. He saw engineers designing new weapons. He saw pilots practicing attack runs. He saw a species that was ready to fight at any moment, that never forgot the lessons of their history. One evening, Chiron found himself in an observation deck, looking out at Saturn's rings. A young human joined him. She wore an engineer's uniform and looked to be about 25 years old. "Beautiful, is not it?" she said. "I never get tired of this view." "Yes," Chiron agreed. "Your station is impressive. You have built something remarkable here." "Thanks. I helped design the water recycling system." She looked proud. Then she glanced at him curiously. "You are part of the delegation, right?" "The ones asking for help with the swarm?" "Yes. I am Ambassador Chiron of Thraxia. I am Engineer Lisa Tanaka." She held out her hand and Chiron carefully shook it, mimicking the human gesture. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why should we help you?" "Your people tried to conquer us." It was the same question Admiral Chen had asked, but from a civilian perspective. Chiron thought carefully before answering. "Because the swarm is different from anything you have faced. It does not want territory or resources or political power, just wants to consume everything living. If it destroys us, it will come for you eventually. This is not about politics. This is about survival for all life in the galaxy." Lisa thought about this. "My grandmother fought in the blockade war. She was a pilot. She told me stories about ramming cargo ships into your fleet. She said it was the scariest thing she ever did, but also the thing she was most proud of. She helped protect Earth's freedom. Your grandmother was very brave." "She also taught me something else," Lisa said. "She taught me that freedom is not just about saying no to tyrants. It is also about choosing who you help and why. We fought for the right to make our own choices. That includes the choice to help others, even if those others were once our enemies." "Do you think humanity will help us?" Lisa smiled. "I think so. We are human. We cannot stand by and watch genocide even if the victims once wronged us. It is not in our nature. We are stubborn like that." The 72 hours passed slowly. The delegation waited anxiously for the Assembly's decision. They knew that humanity's answer would determine the fate of the Concordat, and possibly the entire galaxy. Finally, they were summoned back to the conference room. Admiral Chen was there, but so were 3 other humans. They introduced themselves as representatives of the Human Assembly. There was an old man named Secretary Park who represented the civilian government, a younger woman named General Torres who represented the military, and a middle-aged man named Dr. Okafor who represented the scientific community. Secretary Park spoke first. "Ambassador Chiron, the Human Assembly has completed its debate regarding your request for assistance against the Void Swarm. I will not lie to you. The debate was intense. Many people argued that we should refuse, that the Concordat deserves whatever happens to them. Chiron's heart sank. This was it, rejection, but Secretary Park continued. However, many others argued that we cannot let our past grievances blind us to present dangers. The swarm is a threat to all life. If we do nothing and it destroys you, it will eventually come for us. Moreover, many argued that humanity's strength comes from our principles, not just our weapons. One of those principles is that we protect those who cannot protect themselves. He paused, and Chiron barely dared to breathe. After 72 hours of debate, the assembly voted. The vote was close, but the result is clear. Humanity will help you fight the void swarm. Relief flooded through Chiron so strongly that he almost collapsed. Around him, the other delegates showed similar reactions. They had hoped, but they had not truly believed it would happen. However, Admiral Chen interrupted, her voice sharp. There are conditions. Of course, Chiron said quickly. Whatever you need. First, we will not fight under Concordat command. The human defense fleet will operate as an independent ally, not as a subordinate force. You can coordinate with us, but you cannot order us. Understood. Second, we will use our own tactics and strategies. We know that some of our methods are considered brutal or uncivilized by Concordat standards. Too bad. We fight the way we fight, and you will not interfere. Agreed. Third, after this is over, assuming we survive, Earth's relationship with the Concordat does not change. We are helping you now, but we are not joining you. Our seat in your Grand Assembly will remain empty. We will remain independent and free. Of course, Chiron said. We would not dare to ask for anything else. Admiral Chen studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well. The Terran Defense Fleet will mobilize immediately. We will need intelligence on the swarm, everything you have. Ship movements, attack patterns, any data at all. We will provide everything, Ambassador Prell promised. General Torres leaned forward. One more thing. When we fight to win. That means we will do things that might shock you. We will take risks that seem insane. We will sacrifice when necessary. Do not try to stop us. Do not question our methods in the middle of battle. Trust us or this alliance will not work. We trust you, Chiron said, and he meant it. You are our only hope. Dr. Okafor spoke for the first time. His voice was gentle but firm. Then let us hope that hope is enough. We have studied the limited data you provided about the swarm. It is like nothing we have ever seen. This will not be easy. Many of us will die. We understand, Chiron said quietly, and we are grateful for your sacrifice. Admiral Chen stood up and everyone followed. The fleet will be ready to deploy in 48 hours. I suggest you return to the Concordat and prepare your people. When we arrive at the front lines, things are going to get very loud and very violent. Make sure your civilians are safe. The delegation left Titan Station with hope in their hearts for the first time in months. They had done the impossible. They had convinced humanity to help. Now they just had to hope that it would be enough. As their ship pulled away from the station, Chiron looked back at the massive structure. Somewhere inside, thousands of humans were preparing for war. They were checking weapons, running simulations, saying goodbye to loved ones. They were getting ready to fight for a Concordat that had once tried to destroy them. Chiron remembered something engineer Lisa Tanaka had said. We cannot stand by and watch genocide, even if the victims once wronged us. It is not in our nature. Maybe, Chiron thought, that was what made humanity special, not their stubbornness or their willingness to fight, but their choice to help others even when those others did not deserve it. Their refusal to let old hatreds determine their actions. He hoped it would be enough. Because the swarm was coming, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity went to war not for conquest or revenge, but for something much more dangerous. Their principles. The Terran Defense Fleet arrived at the front line 6 days after leaving Titan Station. Chiron watched from the bridge of the Concordat command ship as 200 human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. It was impressive and terrifying in equal measure. Admiral Chen had not come with the fleet. Instead, command had gone to Admiral Marcus Webb, a veteran of the blockade war. He was younger than Chen, maybe 50 years old by human standards, with dark skin and calculating eyes. When he appeared on the communication screen for the first time, he wasted no words on pleasantries. Concordat Command, this is Admiral Webb of the Terran Defense Fleet. We are ready to coordinate operations. Send us your current tactical situation. The concorded admiral of XRE named Sorthex transmitted all available data. Webb studied it for less than a minute before responding. Your defensive line is too thin. You are trying to protect too many systems at once. The swarm will punch through wherever it focuses its force. We need to consolidate and choose which systems to defend. We cannot abandon those systems, Sorthex protested. There are billions of civilians on those worlds. Then evacuate them, Webb said bluntly. Move them to more defensible systems. Fight where you can win, not where you will lose. That will take time. The swarm could attack any of those systems before we finish evacuating. Then we buy you time. Webb smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. That is what humans do best. Over the next 2 weeks, the Terran Defense Fleet operated in ways that shocked the Concordat forces. Human ships would suddenly appear in systems the swarm was about to attack. They would engage the enemy just long enough to delay them, then retreat before being overwhelmed. They took losses, but never catastrophic ones. They seemed to know exactly how far they could push before breaking. Chiron watched one of these engagements from the safety of the command ship. A swarm fleet had entered the Kepler 442 system, where a Pithrani colony was still evacuating. 15 human ships appeared to intercept them. The swarm fleet numbered over 200 vessels. They are going to be destroyed, Sorthex said, his crystalline voice tight with concern. But the humans did not fight the way the Concordat expected. They did not form a defensive line. They did not try to hold position. Instead, they scattered into small groups and attacked from multiple directions at once. They hit the swarm fleet like stinging insects, darting in to fire their weapons and darting away before the enemy could respond effectively. The swarm tried to adapt. It concentrated its forces to chase down individual human ships. But whenever it did, the humans used their superior speed to escape, leading the swarm away from the colony. For 3 hours, the humans played this deadly game, sacrificing 2 ships to buy time for the civilians below. By the time the swarm broke through the human harassment and reached the colony, the last transport ship was leaving orbit. The planet was empty. The swarm had found nothing to consume. Admiral Webb appeared on the communication channel, his face covered in sweat. His ship had taken damage in the fighting. Kepler 442 is clear. Moving to the next system. Admiral, you lost 2 ships, Sorthex said. I am sorry. We knew the risks. The crews volunteered. We got everyone off that planet. That is what matters. Webb's image flickered as his ship's system struggled. Sending you our tactical analysis of the swarm's behavior. They are fast and aggressive, but they are predictable. They always take the shortest path to their target. We can use that. Over the next month, the pattern repeated across a dozen systems. The humans would delay the swarm just long enough for evacuations to complete. They lost ships, but they saved millions of lives. And more importantly, they began to figure out how the swarm thought. Dr. Okafor, who had come with the fleet as chief scientific advisor, presented his findings to a joint meeting of Concordat and human commanders. The swarm is a hive mind, he explained, but it is not infinitely flexible. It operates on something like instinct. When it sees prey, it attacks. When it encounters resistance, it commits more force. It does not retreat. It does not negotiate. It just keeps coming until it wins or until it is destroyed. We already knew this, said a Concordat general. How does this help us? Because we can use its predictability against it, Okafor said. He pulled up a tactical display. The swarm is like water flowing downhill. It always takes the path of least resistance, so we make certain paths look easier than others. We bait them into traps. Admiral Webb nodded. We also need to hit them psychologically. They are a hive mind, Sorthex objected. They do not have psychology. Everything with intelligence has psychology, Webb countered. The swarm makes decisions based on analysis of cost versus benefit. It calculates how many resources it will take to consume a target. If the cost is too high, it might change its approach. We need to make ourselves too expensive to eat. How do we do that? Webb's smile was grim. We show them what happens when they fight humanity. We show them that we do not surrender, we do not break, and we do not die quietly. The plan that emerged was audacious and terrifying. The Concordat would abandon several outer systems, making it look like they were in full retreat. The swarm would follow, eager for easy prey, but those systems would be trapped. Human ships rigged with antimatter charges would be hidden among the asteroids and debris. Automated stations would broadcast false life signs to attract the swarm. and when the swarm committed its forces, everything would explode at once. This plan will destroy significant amounts of concordate property, a counselor objected. Multiple space stations, mining facilities, terraforming equipment. Better to lose property than lives, Chiron said. He had been given a position as liaison between the concordate and the human fleet. Admiral Webb is right. We need to hurt them badly enough that they hesitate. The plan was approved. Over the next 2 weeks, the concordate forces pulled back from 6 systems. They made it look panicked and disorganized, like they were fleeing in terror. The swarm took the bait. Its forces surged forward, eager to consume the abandoned worlds. The humans called it Operation Burning Gate because they were closing the gate with fire. Chiron watched from a safe distance as the trap was sprung. The swarm fleet entered the target systems in massive numbers, over 400 ships spread across 6 locations. They moved toward the space stations and planetary facilities, expecting to find easy resources. Instead, they found automated defenses that fought with unusual ferocity, and sensor readings that suggested millions of lives waiting to be consumed. The swarm committed more ships. It wanted to overwhelm the defenses quickly, and then the humans triggered the trap. 50 human ships that had been hidden among the debris suddenly activated. They were old vessels, most of them decommissioned military ships that had been scheduled for scrap. Each one was packed with antimatter charges and crewed by volunteers who knew they were not coming back. The ships accelerated to ramming speed. The swarm tried to stop them, but it was too late. The humans were too close and too fast. 50 ships struck 50 targets and detonated. The explosions were like miniature stars being born. Space itself seemed to tear apart. The swarm ships caught in the blast were vaporized instantly. Those on the edge of the blast radius were crippled. Debris from destroyed ships became shrapnel that tore through the swarm formation. But the trap was not finished. The automated stations the swarm had been approaching were also bombs. They detonated in sequence, creating a chain reaction that rippled through all 6 systems. In less than 10 minutes, 40% of the swarm's vanguard fleet was destroyed. And then the humans did something even more shocking. They broadcast a message on all swarm communication frequencies. It was not a tactical message or a demand for surrender. It was a video compilation of human history. The video showed humans throughout the ages facing extinction and refusing to submit. It showed cities burning while people fought in the streets. It showed ships sinking while crews fired their last shots. It showed soldiers charging into impossible situations because retreat was not an option. It showed disasters and wars and catastrophes, and humans always standing back up, always refusing to quit. The video ended with a simple message in multiple languages and mathematical codes that any intelligent species could understand. We are the species that refuse to die. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. We have been knocked down 1,000 times, and 1,000 times we have stood back up. We do not know how to surrender. We do not know how to give up. Try to consume us and you will choke. Try to destroy us and you will break your teeth. We are humanity and we are not afraid of you. Chiron watched the swarm's response with fascination and horror. For the first time since the war began, the swarm hesitated. Its remaining ships stopped advancing. They held position for 3 hours, presumably while the hive mind analyzed what had happened. What is it doing? Sorthex asked. It is thinking, Admiral Webb said. It is calculating whether consuming the concordate is worth the cost if humans are involved. It is trying to figure out what kind of species deliberately sacrifices its own people just to make a point. Your volunteers, Chiron said quietly. The ones on those 50 ships. They knew they would die. Yes, we asked for volunteers and we had 10 times more people apply than we had ships available. We had to turn people away. Webb's voice was steady, but Chiron could hear the weight of command in it. Every single volunteer understood the mission. Every single one of them chose to die so others could live. That is what makes us human, Ambassador. We die for what we believe in. The swarm's response came suddenly. Its forces retreated from all contested systems. They pulled back to the edge of concordate space and regrouped. For the first time in recorded history, the Void Swarm had encountered prey it could not easily consume, and it had chosen to reassess. We hurt them, General Torres said, studying the tactical displays. But they are not defeated. They are just being cautious now. How long do we have? Sorthex asked. Days, maybe weeks. The swarm is analyzing our tactics. It will adapt. When it comes back, it will be harder to fight. But the temporary victory gave the concordate something precious. Hope. For the first time since the swarm returned, people believed they might survive. The evacuation efforts continued, but now they had time to do it properly. Civilian populations were moved to fortified systems. Defense fleets were reorganized. And most importantly, Concordat forces began studying human tactics. Chiron found himself giving lectures to Concordat military officers about human military philosophy. It was strange teaching warriors and admirals about a species he had barely understood a few months ago. Humans see war differently than we do, he explained to a room full of skeptical officers. We see war as a failure of diplomacy, something to be avoided if possible and ended quickly if not. Humans see war as sometimes necessary, and when they fight to win. They do not hold back. They do not worry about appearing civilized. They worry about survival. That is barbaric, one officer objected. Perhaps, Chiron agreed, but it is also effective. The swarm does not care about civilization or rules or proper behavior. It only understands force. And humans understand how to use force without hesitation or regret. A draconian general spoke up. My people are warriors. We understand honor in combat. But what the humans did, sacrificing 50 ships and their crews, that was not war. That was insanity, was it? Chiron challenged. Those 50 ships destroyed 200 swarm vessels. That is a 4-to-1 kill ratio. Mathematically, it was an excellent exchange. But more than that, it sent a message. The swarm now knows that humanity will pay any price to win. That knowledge makes the swarm cautious, and caution gives us time. The draconian general considered this. You have learned much about humans, Ambassador. Yes, and the most important thing I learned is this. Humans do not fight for territory or resources or glory. They fight for principles. They fight for ideas. And you cannot kill an idea by destroying ships or taking planets. Ideas only die when people stop believing in them. Humans believe in freedom, in independence, in the right to stand against tyranny. As long as they believe, they will fight. 3 weeks after Operation Burning Gate, the swarm returned. But this time it was different. The swarm had adapted. Its ships moved more carefully, checking for traps. Its forces attacked in smaller, more coordinated groups instead of massive waves. It had learned to respect its enemy. The war entered a new phase. The Concordat and human forces worked together more closely now, coordinating their attacks and defenses. The humans taught the Concordat to be aggressive, to take risks, to sacrifice when necessary. The Concordat taught the humans patience, logistics, and the value of preserving resources. Slowly, painfully, they began to push the swarm back. Every system was fought for desperately. Every victory cost lives, but the tide was turning. The swarm had met an enemy it could not simply consume. It had met humans, and humans refused to be eaten quietly. Chiron stood on the bridge of the command ship and watched the battle displays. Human ships and Concordat vessels fought side by side now, covering each other, coordinating their movements. They were not one fleet, but they were allies, real allies forged in the fire of desperate combat. Admiral Webb appeared on the communication screen. His face was gaunt from weeks of constant combat, but his eyes were bright. Ambassador, the swarm is retreating from the Cornix system. We have pushed them back to the edge of the galaxy. If we hit them hard now, we can break their offensive completely. What do you need? Everything you can give me. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier who can fight. This is our chance to end this. Sorthex looked at Chiron. Do we trust them? Chiron looked at the tactical display showing human ships that had been fighting for weeks without rest. He thought about the volunteers who had died at Burning Gate. He thought about Admiral Chen and her daughter Sarah. He thought about engineer Lisa Tanaka and her grandmother, who had rammed cargo ships into Concordat vessels 300 years ago. Yes, Chiron said. We trust them. Give Admiral Webb everything he asks for. The final battle was about to begin. The final battle took place at the edge of the galaxy, in a region of space called the Outer Dark. It was an area where stars were scarce, and the void between galaxies began. The swarm had retreated here, regrouping its forces for one last push. If the Concordat and humanity could break them here, the swarm would be forced to withdraw back into the extragalactic void. If they failed, the swarm would recover and continue its consumption of the galaxy. Chiron stood on the bridge of the Concordat flagship, watching the combined fleet assemble. 300 Concordat ships of various designs and sizes. 200 human vessels, many showing damage from weeks of continuous combat. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in known history, representing dozens of species united against a common enemy. Admiral Webb's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Kyren could see his command crew working frantically. All ships, this is Admiral Webb. Final weapons check. Final systems check. We go in 20 minutes. Admiral, Sorthek said, our scouts report the swarm has over 500 ships waiting for us. We are outnumbered. We have been outnumbered since this war started, Webb replied. Has not stopped us yet. Besides, we have something the swarm does not have. What is that? Webb smiled. We have a reason to fight. The swarm fights because it is hungry. We fight because we choose to. That makes all the difference. The fleet moved forward in formation, concordate ships in the center, human ships on the flanks. They had practiced this maneuver dozens of times over the past weeks, coordinating their movements, learning each other's patterns. They were not one military, but they had learned to fight as one force. As they approached the swarm position, Kyren saw something on the sensors that made his blood run cold. The swarm had not just 500 ships. There were over 800, with more emerging from the intergalactic void. They were waiting for us, Sorthek said, his crystalline voice cracking with fear. It is a trap. We need to retreat. No, Admiral Webb's voice was firm. We commit. If we retreat now, the swarm will chase us back into concordate space. We end this here one way or another. Admiral, we cannot win against those numbers. We can, Webb insisted, but we need to do it the human way. Are you willing to trust me, Admiral Sorthex? The Vexari Admiral looked at Kyren. Kyren thought about everything he had learned about humanity over the past months. Their stubbornness, their refusal to surrender, their willingness to sacrifice. He thought about the empty seat in the Grand Assembly and what it represented. Trust him, Kyren said quietly. They have never let us down. Sorthex took a deep breath, his body humming with tension. Very well, Admiral Webb, what do you need us to do? I need you to make them angry. Attack their center formation. Make them think you are the main threat. Draw as many ships toward you as possible. That will leave us exposed. We will be surrounded, yes, but that is when we strike. Human fleet will hit them from behind while they are focused on you. We cut off their reinforcements from the void, then collapse their formation from the outside in. It was a desperate plan. It required the concordate forces to act as bait, to draw the full fury of the swarm while trusting that the humans would arrive in time to save them. It required faith, and faith was not something the concordate had practiced much in recent centuries. We will do it, Sorthex said. May the stars guide us all. The concordate fleet broke formation and accelerated toward the swarm center. The swarm responded exactly as Webb had predicted. Hundreds of ships turned to face this new threat, converging on the concordate forces like a tidal wave of alien metal and hunger. Kyren watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. Concordat ships formed a defensive sphere, all weapons firing outward. The swarm crashed against them like waves against a rock. Ships on both sides exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The casualty report started scrolling across his screen too fast to read individual names. Where are the humans? Sorthex demanded. We cannot hold this position much longer. As if in answer, the human fleet appeared behind the swarm formation. But they were not attacking. Instead, they were doing something strange. Every human ship was broadcasting the same signal. The same video that had been shown after Operation Burning Gate. The compilation of human history. Human survival, human refusal to die, what are they doing? A Concordat officer asked. Why are they not attacking? Then Kyren understood. They are not just fighting a battle. They are fighting a war of ideas. They want the swarm to understand what it is facing. The swarm hesitated. For just a moment, its attack on the concordate forces slowed as the hive mind processed this new information, and in that moment of hesitation the human fleet struck. They did not attack with conventional weapons first. Instead, 30 human ships broke formation and accelerated to impossible speeds. They were the same type of vessels used in Operation Burning Gate. Old ships packed with antimatter, crewed by volunteers who knew they were flying their last mission. But this time, the target was different. The human ships headed straight for the rift between galaxies, the void from which the swarm kept bringing reinforcements. They reached the edge of the rift and detonated all at once. The explosion was unlike anything Kyren had ever seen. Space itself seemed to collapse and then expand. The rift shimmered and began to close. The swarm ships still emerging from the void were caught in the collapse, crushed by impossible forces. They sealed the rift, Sorthex whispered in awe. The swarm cannot bring in more ships. Now we finish this, Admiral Webb said. The human fleet, minus the 30 ships that had just sacrificed themselves, crashed into the swarm from behind. They fought with a ferocity that shocked even those who had been fighting beside them for weeks. Human ships rammed swarm vessels. Human pilots flew damaged ships directly into enemy formations before ejecting in escape pods. Human commanders ordered tactics that no sane military would consider. And somehow they worked because the swarm could not predict such insane bravery. The Concordate forces, encouraged by the human assault, pressed their own attack. They had learned from humanity. They stopped fighting defensively and started fighting to win. They took risks they would never have taken before. They sacrificed ships to create openings for others to exploit. The battle raged for 18 hours. Ships exploded. Lives were lost by the thousands. But slowly, inexorably, the combined fleet began to push the swarm back. The hive mind tried to adapt, tried to find a way to counter these enemies who refused to behave rationally, but it could not, because you cannot predict someone who chooses principles over survival. Finally, the swarm broke. Its remaining ships turned and fled back toward the intergalactic void, but the rift was closed. They were trapped in the galaxy with nowhere to run. The combined fleet pursued them, destroying ship after ship until the swarm fleet was reduced to scattered remnants. And then, for the first time in recorded history, the void swarm retreated completely. The surviving ships scattered in all directions, fleeing into the depths of space. The threat was not eliminated entirely, but it was broken. The swarm would not return to threaten the galaxy for generations, if ever. On the bridge of the Concordate flagship, everyone stood in stunned silence. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had actually won. Casualty reports, Sorthex said quietly. The numbers were devastating. The Concordate had lost 140 ships. Over 200,000 beings had died, but the human losses were even more staggering. They had lost 90 ships, including the 30 volunteers who closed the rift. Over 100,000 humans had given their lives in the battle. Kyren felt tears running down his face from all four eyes. So many dead, so much sacrifice, but they had saved the galaxy. Admiral Webb appeared on the screen one last time. His ship was heavily damaged, smoke visible behind him. His face was covered in blood from a head wound. But he was smiling. Concordate fleet, this is Admiral Webb. The swarm is broken. The galaxy is safe. Well done, everyone. Well done. The communication cut off as Webb's ship lost power. Kyren watched rescue vessels moving to assist the damaged human ships. So many of them were barely functional, held together by emergency repairs and stubborn determination. 3 weeks later, the surviving ships returned to Concordate space. They were greeted as heroes. Every system they passed through celebrated their victory. Species that had been on the edge of extinction were now safe, and they knew who to thank. The Concordate Council called for a grand ceremony to honor their saviors. They prepared Earth's seat in the Grand Assembly, polishing it until it gleamed. They drafted speeches about eternal friendship and mutual cooperation. They designed medals and awards. They prepared everything for the moment when humanity would finally take its place among the great species of the galaxy. Kyren was chosen to be the official liaison who would formally invite humanity to join the Concordate. It was considered a great honor, and he accepted with mixed feelings. He had come to understand humans well enough to suspect they would not accept. Admiral Chen arrived for the ceremony. Not Admiral Webb, who was still recovering from his injuries. Chen came as Earth's official representative, along with a delegation of a dozen other humans. They were given rooms in the finest hotels, treated with the utmost respect, and honored in every way possible. The day of the ceremony arrived. The Grand Assembly chamber was packed with representatives from all 47 Concordate species. Additional observers filled every available space. This was history being made, and everyone wanted to witness it. Earth's seat sat in the front row, pristine and empty as it had been for 300 years. Sorthex gave a speech about courage and sacrifice. Other ambassadors spoke about the debt the galaxy owed to humanity. The speeches went on for hours, building toward the moment when Admiral Chen would be asked to take Earth's seat and formally join the Concordate. Finally, the moment came. Sorthex turned to Admiral Chen. Admiral, on behalf of the Galactic Concordat and all species here represented, we invite you to take Earth's rightful place among us. We offer you full membership with all rights and privileges. We offer our friendship, our alliance, our eternal gratitude. Please take your seat. The chamber fell silent. Every eye was on Admiral Chen as she walked forward. She moved slowly, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. She reached Earth's seat and stood before it, looking down at the blue-green marble carved with ancient human symbols. And then she walked past it. A confused murmur ran through the assembly. Chen walked to the center of the chamber and turned to face everyone. When she spoke, her voice was amplified throughout the hall. "We did not fight for a seat," she said simply. "We fought because extinction offends us. Whether it is our extinction or yours, we cannot stand by and watch intelligent life be destroyed. That is who we are. That is what we do." She paused, looking around the chamber at all the different species gathered there. 300 years ago, you asked us to join your concordat. You asked us to submit to your rules, your laws, your authority. We refused then, and we refuse now. Not because we hate you or want to remain apart, but because submission is not in our nature. "But Admiral," Sorthex protested, "we no longer ask for submission. We offer partnership, equality, friendship." "I know," Chen said gently, "and we accept your friendship. We accept your partnership. But we will stand beside you as equals, not as members. We will answer your distress calls as allies, not as subjects of the Concordat. We will help you when you need help. Not because a council voted to send us, but because we choose to help." She gestured to the empty seat. "You wanted us to take that seat, to fill it, to join your hierarchy. But Earth's seat will remain empty, not because we are too proud to sit in it, but because we understand something important. The moment you take a throne, you begin to defend it. You start to worry about power and politics and position. Humanity has no interest in thrones. We are too busy defending something far more important." "What is that?" Chiron asked, though he already knew the answer. "Freedom," Chen said. "The right to stand unchained under our own stars. The right to choose our own path. The right to say yes or no based on our own judgment, not someone else's authority. That is what we fought for 300 years ago. That is what we fought for in this war. And that is what we will always fight for." She looked directly at Chiron. "You asked me once if humans would help the Concordat if you needed it. Today you have your answer. Yes, we will help. Not because we are part of your organization, but because we believe in protecting life. We believe in standing against tyranny and oppression, whether that tyranny comes from a hive mind that wants to consume you or from well-meaning councils that want to control you." The chamber was completely silent. No one knew what to say. This was not how the ceremony was supposed to go. Then something unexpected happened. Chiron began to applaud. He stood up from his seat and clapped his hands together in the human gesture of appreciation. The sound echoed through the silent chamber. Slowly, others joined him. Sorthex was next, his crystalline body singing a song of respect. Then the draconian delegation stood, roaring their approval in their traditional way. One by one, all 47 species rose to their feet and honored Admiral Chen and humanity. They were not applauding because humanity joined the Concordat. They were applauding because humanity had taught them something they had forgotten, that freedom is not given, it is chosen. That real strength is not about control, but about choice. That the greatest gift you can give someone is not protection or security, but respect for their right to be free. The applause continued for 10 minutes. When it finally died down, Sorthex approached Admiral Chen. "We understand," he said. "Earth's seat will remain empty. But humanity will always have a voice in this assembly. You may not be members, but you will be heard. We grant you permanent observer status. You may attend our meetings, speak your mind, offer your counsel, but you will have no obligations. You are free to come and go as you please, to help or not help as you choose." Chen considered this. "We accept. But know this, if you call for help, we will come. Not every time, not for every reason, but when the cause is just and the need is real, humanity will stand with you. That is our promise." "That is all we can ask," Sorthex said. "Thank you, Admiral Chen. Thank you to all of humanity." The ceremony ended not with humanity joining the Concordat, but with a new kind of alliance. An alliance between free peoples who chose to stand together without being bound together. It was unprecedented in galactic history, but then so was humanity. After the ceremony, Chiron found Admiral Chen standing alone, looking at Earth's seat. He approached her carefully. May I join you? He asked. Of course, Ambassador. They stood together in silence for a moment. Finally, Chiron spoke. I studied your history. I watched the recordings of the blockade war. I learned about your daughter Sarah and what she did at Luna. Chen's expression tightened. She was a good soldier, a good daughter. I miss her every day. She saved the galaxy, Chiron said. If the blockade war had continued, humanity might have been too weak to help us against the swarm. If she had not made her sacrifice, if humanity had not taught the Concordat to respect your freedom, we might not have had the courage to ask for your help. In a strange way, her death 300 years ago saved all of us. Chen was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. That would have made her happy. Sarah believed that freedom was worth dying for. She believed that standing up to tyrants, even at the cost of her own life, was the right thing to do. If her death meant that others could remain free, she would consider it a worthy sacrifice. Will you tell me about her? Chiron asked. Not the soldier or the hero, the person. Chen smiled sadly. She loved music. Old Earth jazz from the 20th century. She played the saxophone badly but with great enthusiasm. She wanted to travel to other galaxies, to see what was beyond our own. She loved the stars and everything about space. She used to say that humans were meant to live out here among the stars, free and wild and untamed. She was right, Chiron said. Humanity does belong among the stars, not sitting in councils or taking orders from others, but standing free and helping those who need help. Your daughter understood that. They stood together for a while longer, two beings from different species looking at an empty seat that represented something bigger than either of them could fully articulate. Finally, Chen turned to leave. Ambassador Chiron, she said, thank you for convincing the Concordat to ask for our help. Without you, this alliance would never have happened. I did what was necessary, Chiron said. Just as you did. No, Chen said. You did more than that. You learned to see humans not as savages or enemies, but as people. You understood us when no one else wanted to. That took courage and wisdom. Your people are lucky to have you. She left, and Chiron remained standing before the empty seat. He thought about everything that had happened. The war, the battles, the sacrifices. He thought about the humans who had died to save species that once tried to conquer them. He thought about the future, about this strange new alliance between free peoples. Other ambassadors filed out of the chamber, discussing what had happened. Some were disappointed that humanity had not joined. Others were relieved. But all of them understood that something fundamental had changed. The Concordat had learned that they could not control everyone, that some species had to be approached as equals, not subjects. Chiron was the last to leave the chamber. As he walked toward the exit, he looked back one more time at Earth's seat. It sat there in the front row, beautiful and empty, a monument to freedom and choice. He smiled. Earth's seat would remain untouched for another 1,000 years. Not because humanity was too proud to sit there, but because they understood something the galaxy was only beginning to learn. Freedom is not about where you sit or who gives you permission. Freedom is about the right to stand on your own, to make your own choices, to live your own life under your own stars. And humanity had no interest in sitting down. They were too busy standing up for what they believed in. As Chiron left the chamber, he felt hope for the future. The galaxy had changed. It had learned from humanity that freedom cannot be conquered, only chosen. And that lesson would echo through the stars for generations to come. Somewhere on Earth, on the third planet of a yellow star, humans lived their lives as they always had, free, unchained, answering to no one but themselves. And somewhere in the grand assembly of the Galactic Concordat, a seat made of blue-green marble sat empty, waiting for no one, representing everything that mattered. Earth's seat was left untouched, for Earth had never known submission and never would.